Welcome back, everyone. We're diving deep into Judge Judy's courtroom today.
Ooh, exciting.
We found this YouTube video.
Yeah.
It's called Judge Judy, episode 3591, Best Amazing Cases, Season 2025, full episode.
Okay.
It's from a channel called Judy Musical, and we're going to break down some of the most interesting cases.
Sounds good.
And we'll try to pull out some legal lessons for you along the way.
Awesome.
So first up,
Okay.
we have a case Hay versus Hill.
All right.
So Edmund Hay is a musician, and he's suing Ramsey Hill, who's a videographer, for a breach of contract.
Okay.
But here's the thing. Hill actually hasn't made a music video in like 10 years.
Oh, really?
He's an insurance agent.
Wow.
And only took this on as a favor for a friend.
Interesting. So, right away, that's a bit of a red flag.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely makes you wonder about his expertise, and if that impacts the contract at all.
For sure.
So they had two separate contracts.
Okay.
One was for 3 music videos totaling $3,000.
Right.
And then a second contract for a live performance, which was scheduled for May 1st for $1,500.
Okay, so 2 different agreements with different terms and payments.
Exactly. And Hay paid $1,500 for the music videos,
Okay.
and then the full $1,500 for the performance.
Right.
So the live performance never ended up happening.
Okay.
So that part's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, he should get his money back.
Yeah, Hay gets his $1,500 back for that one.
Right.
But it's the music video contract that's a little bit messy.
Oh, how so?
So Hill only delivered one video,
Oh, really?
and he argued that the $1,500 covered just that first video.
Okay.
But Hay, he believed that $1,500 was just a down payment for all 3 videos.
Oh, I see. So a classic misunderstanding
Yeah.
about, what was agreed upon.
And this really shows why it's so important to have everything in writing.
Absolutely. You can't just rely on, casual conversation or assumptions.
Yeah, you have to have a clear contract.
100%.
And Judge Judy, she totally agreed with that.
Judge.
She pointed out that the written contract very clearly said, quote, $1,500 for the first music video production.
Oh, so Hill was in the right.
Yeah, Hill was actually in the right in this case. And Hay, he learned a tough lesson about sticking to the written term, regardless of any side conversations or expectations.
Yeah, he learned the hard way
Yeah.
that verbal agreements don't hold up in court.
Exactly.
You need that paper trail.
And Judge Judy actually emphasized that a written contract can't be modified just through talking.
Right.
Any changes need to also be in writing.
Yep. That's a crucial point to remember.
Definitely. It's always get it in writing, folks.
Always.
So moving on to our next case, we have Johnson versus Blue.
Right.
And this one's a family feud.
Oh, boy.
With some real tension.
I bet family disagreements can get really messy.
Yeah, especially in court,
For sure. So who are the players in this case?
So it's Rel Johnson. She's suing her brother, Antonio Blue.
Okay.
And his wife, Monique Blue.
All right.
For unpaid rent and damages to her property.
Ooh, that's a lot.
It is. So here's the backstory. Rurel moved to Arizona
Okay.
and decided to lease her home in California to her brother and his wife for 2 years.
Makes sense.
With a 6-month extension after that.
Okay, so a pretty standard lease agreement.
Yeah.
With a clear timeline.
Uh-huh. But then Rella, she had to move back to California before the lease actually ended.
Oh, why was that?
Her health insurance wasn't covered in Arizona.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And get this, her brother and his wife,
Yeah.
they stayed in the house for 3 months after the lease was over without paying rent.
Oh, no. That's a clear violation of the lease.
Yeah, and their defense was
What did they say?
that they were supposed to buy the house.
Oh, really?
And they made all these renovations.
Okay.
With the expectation of buying it.
Interesting. But was there any proof of that?
None whatsoever.
Of course not.
No written rent-to-buy agreement or anything.
Wow. Shocker. There it is again.
Yeah, the importance of written agreements.
It's a recurring theme.
It really is. They did do some work on the house, like painting the interior
Right.
and restaining the cabinets and a new mailbox.
All right, but did that justify not paying rent?
Not according to Judge Judy.
What did she say?
She pointed out that they made those improvements for their own comfort while they were living there.
Right.
And since there was no rent-to-buy agreement, Rel wasn't obligated to reimburse them.
It makes sense. She's right.
Yeah, and they also tried to claim harassment and invasion of privacy.
Oh, really?
But they had no evidence.
Of course not.
So those claims were thrown out.
Good.
And in the end, Rel received $4,800 for the unpaid rent.
Wow, so a win for the landlord.
Definitely. And it's a reminder to have clear agreements,
Absolutely. And for tenants to understand their lease terms.
Yeah. Okay, you ready for the next case?
Hit me with it.
This one's Gray versus Woods.
Okay.
And it's the case of the dueling drunks.
Dueling drunks. What does that even mean?
So Daniel Gray is suing Tony Woods for damages to his car after a night of heavy drinking.
Oh, boy.
But here's the catch. Neither of them can remember who was driving when the car was totaled.
Oh, no.
I know.
That is a sticky situation.
It is, and it just really underlines the danger
Yeah.
of drinking and driving.
Huge consequences.
So they started their night
Okay.
at a barber shop watching a football game.
Uh-huh.
Then they hit up multiple bars
Oh, no.
before finally grabbing some food.
So they were drinking for a while.
Gray was dropped off at the first bar around 5:30 p.m.
Okay.
and Woods joined later.
All right.
And both of them admitted to drinking, throughout the evening.
So already not a good start.
It's not a good start at all.
Multiple locations drinking for hours.
Exactly. And on top of that, they had a designated water drinking driver.
A what?
A designated water drinking driver.
So someone who wasn't drinking alcohol.
Yeah, his name was Muhammad.
Okay. Interesting strategy.
Yeah, I don't know if that really solves the problem, though.
No, not really. I mean, having someone sober is obviously better.
Right.
But it doesn't address the issue of them both drinking heavily.
Exactly. So anyway, Muhammad eventually went home, leaving Gray and Woods to their own devices.
And that's when things went south.
That's when things get really blurry.
Okay.
So Gray says he was driving to the barbershop to use the restroom.
Okay.
And that he left the car running because it was cold.
Right.
Woods was supposedly in the passenger seat.
Okay.
Then Gray says Woods came into the barbershop saying he lost his phone at the last bar.
So Gray's claiming he's sober enough to drive,
Yeah.
but not sober enough to remember what happened.
Right. It does seem a little convenient.
A little bit. So what's Woods' side of the story?
Well, he says that he found his phone, got back in the car,
Okay.
and then blacked out.
Oh, no.
He claims he doesn't remember anything after that.
So both of their stories have some hole.
They do.
It sounds like they're each trying to downplay
Yeah.
how much they were drinking.
Yeah, and trying to avoid blame.
Exactly. And I bet Judge Judy saw right through them.
Oh, she did. She was not buying either of their stories.
Good for her.
She was extremely skeptical and called them both out for their irresponsible behavior.
It's a serious issue.
It is. And it's a reminder that drunk driving can have serious legal consequences, even if no one is injured.
Absolutely. And it could have been so much worse.
Yeah, they're lucky no one else was involved.
Exactly. So what was the final verdict?
Well, Judge Judy actually split the cost of the car repair.
Oh, wow.
$2,750 for each of them.
Okay.
She said that while she believed Gray was likely the one driving when the car actually crashed, she held them both responsible.
Makes sense.
Since they were both driving drunk at some point during the night.
It's a good reminder that even if you weren't the one behind the wheel,
Yeah.
at the moment of the accident,
Right.
you can still be held accountable,
Yeah, if you were driving drunk earlier.
especially if it contributed to the incident.
It's a good lesson for everyone.
Definitely. Okay, what's next?
Okay, so our next case takes us into the world of filmmaking.
Ooh, fun.
It's Sanchez versus Vasquez.
Okay.
Christian Sanchez is suing seasoned filmmaker Juan Vasquez for unpaid work
Okay.
and defamation.
Wow, so this is about more than just money.
It is. So Sanchez is a film school grad, and he actually landed this job through a family friend.
Ah, the classic, it's all about who you know.
Right.
Let's see if those connections helped him or caused more trouble.
Yeah, so he claims he was hired as the first assistant director
Okay.
for Vasquez's latest project.
Which is?
It's a docudrama with a budget of $120,000.
Wow, so a pretty serious project.
Yeah, but Vasquez, he insists that Sanchez was just an unpaid intern,
Really?
not an actual paid employee.
So there's the conflict right there.
There it is, but their initial emails seem to contradict that.
Oh, how so?
Vasquez actually wrote in an email, quote, "I need a first AD, someone's family is sick."
That definitely sounds like a paid position.
Right.
Not an internship.
Yeah, and Judge Judy, she picked up on that right away.
I bet.
She said that most internships these days
Yeah.
are actually paid.
They are.
So Vasquez's claim seemed a little suspicious, especially given that email.
Yeah, it doesn't really add up.
And here's another thing, Vasquez, he couldn't even remember whose family member was supposedly sick.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the one that prevented the original first AD from working.
So that's another red flag.
Yeah, it makes you wonder about his story.
For sure. So what's Sanchez's version of events?
So Sanchez claims that Vasquez verbally agreed to pay him $150 a day for 14 days of work.
Okay.
He ended up working 12 days on set
Oh, what?
and then got COVID.
Oh, no.
I know. And then Vasquez told him to just work from home for the last 2 days.
Oh, wow.
Which he did.
Okay, so Sanchez is saying he fulfilled his end of the bargain,
Exactly.
even if he worked remotely for part of it.
Yeah, but Vasquez, he tells a completely different story.
What's he say?
He says that Sanchez was incompetent
Oh.
and cost them more money than he was worth.
Oh, boy.
He even complained about Sanchez's pizza ordering skills.
What?
He said, quote, "This kid couldn't even order pizza. He spent $300 at Domino's."
$300 at Domino's?
I know.
That's a lot of pizza.
It is. But regardless of how Vasquez felt about Sanchez's performance, does that mean he doesn't have to pay him?
Exactly. That's the question.
And that's what Judge Judy was trying to figure out.
Yeah.
She actually seemed baffled that Vasquez didn't just fire Sanchez if he was so unhappy with his work.
Yeah, I mean, if he was really that bad,
Right.
why keep him on?
She even said, quote, "There are employees I've had over the years who are terrific, some terrible. The terrible ones who are really terrible, I would have liked to fire, period. But I couldn't because of human resources."
That's so relatable.
It is.
Everyone's dealt with difficult coworkers.
Yeah.
But you can't just withhold their pay.
Exactly. You have to follow proper procedures.
Yep, there are rules in place for a reason.
And she went on to say, quote, "You have to pay him until you can fire him. If you have him come to work, even if he's doing a terrible job, you still have to pay him."
She's absolutely right.
Yeah. And here's another twist to this whole thing.
Okay.
Sanchez produced a sign-actor agreement
Oh, really?
that stated that he would get paid $150 a day for 14 days of shooting
Okay.
and receive credit in the film.
So there's written proof.
There is. But Vasquez, he tried to explain this away,
Oh.
saying that he signs these actor agreements every day.
Oh, come on.
And that he didn't realize what he was signing.
That's a hard one to believe.
Yeah, Judge Judy didn't buy it either.
I bet.
Especially because it contradicts his earlier statements.
Right.
And the agreement also said that Sanchez would get paid even if he was sick.
Oh, wow. So Vasquez telling him to work from home actually reinforced the contract.
It did.
It's amazing how a little detail like working from home
Yeah.
can have legal implications.
Yeah.
It just shows how important it is to be mindful
Yeah.
of all your communications and actions.
Absolutely, because they could end up being used as evidence.
Exactly. So what happened with the defamation claim?
So Sanchez claimed that Vasquez told someone he wasn't being paid because he was on drugs.
Ooh, that's serious.
It is. But the only evidence he had was a text message from Vasquez saying that someone else told him that.
Ah, so he wasn't actually making the accusation himself.
Right, he was just repeating what he heard.
Okay, so that might not meet the legal definition of defamation.
Yeah.
It has to be a false statement
Yeah.
that harms someone's reputation.
And communicated to a third party.
Right.
So in the end, Sanchez was awarded $2,100 for the unpaid work,
Okay.
but the defamation claim was dismissed.
So a partial victory for Sanchez.
It was.
But this case really shows the importance of having clear written agreements.
It does, and it reminds us that even if you win your case, you might not get everything you asked for.
True. It's not always a complete win.
And this whole case really highlighted Judge Judy's commentary on nepotism.
Oh, interesting.
And how difficult it can be to fire employees these days.
Yeah, it's a tough situation for employers.
It is. So even with connections, a solid contract and clear expectations are essential.
Definitely. All right, what's our next case?
All right, now get ready for some slittering surprises.
Slitting.
Because we're moving on to Dias versus Chow.
Okay.
This one's a snake breeding business deal gone wrong.
Snakes? Wow, this episode's all over the place.
It is. So Cassandra Bias is suing Brian Chow, who is an exotic pet store owner and also a family friend.
Okay.
For money she invested in this snake breeding business.
All right, so it's a business partnership gone wrong.
Yeah, the initial agreement was for Dias and her boyfriend to buy 5 reticulated pythons.
5 pythons?
Yes, 1 male and 4 females for breeding.
Okay.
And Chow was supposed to house them at his shop.
So they were going into business together.
Yeah.
Using his space.
Uh-huh. But then things changed.
Oh, what happened?
Dias ended up paying for only 2 female snakes.
2 instead of 5.
Yeah, $10,000 total.
Wow, that's a big difference.
It is.
So why the change in plans?
Well, Chow claims that they just decided to buy 2 snakes.
Okay.
And he offered to breed them with his own male snake.
Oh, okay.
As an investment for Dias.
All right, but that's not what their text messages say.
They don't. It seems like they were originally going to split the cost of 5 snakes.
Okay.
But they were still trying to figure out the finances.
I see. So again, another case of a discrepancy.
Yes.
Between what was discussed
Yeah.
and the final agreement.
And Dias, she claims that Chow became unresponsive
Really?
after he received the $10,000.
Oh, no, that's not a good sign.
No, they even had to go to his shop to get answers.
Not a good look for Chow.
Not at all. And things escalated at the shop.
Oh, God.
Dias demanded her money back.
Okay.
And her boyfriend,
Yeah.
he smashed a glass cage
What?
and took the snakes.
Oh, my goodness. Things got physical.
They did. It sounds crazy, but Dias, she actually had video evidence of the whole confrontation.
Oh, wow. So she filmed it.
She did, and the video contradicted Chow's claims
About what?
about fulfilling the contract and having the male snake ready for breeding.
That video evidence is going to be key.
It was, and Chow, he had absolutely no documentation
Shocker.
to support his side of the story.
So he was caught in his own lies?
Basically, and get this, Dias's boyfriend was arrested for theft,
No way.
but the charges were later dropped.
Okay.
And the snakes were returned.
Wow, what a mess.
It was a mess. Judge Judy was not impressed with Chow at all.
I bet.
She called him out for his evasiveness and lack of preparation.
It doesn't sound like he had a good case.
He didn't. In the end, she ruled in favor of Dias awarding her the full $10,000 back.
Wow, so she got everything back.
She did.
That's a big win.
It is. And Judge Judy, she even suggested that Chow sell the snakes online.
Really?
To recoup his losses.
Wow, so she gave him some business advice.
She did. It was pretty funny. So yet again,
Yep.
documentation is essential.
Absolutely. Even in informal business agreements.
Yeah, and maybe avoid smashing glass cages,
Probably a good idea.
even when you're dealing with a slippery character.
True. All right, what's next?
Now we're moving on to a classic he said, she said scenario.
Okay.
Gonzalez versus Gilbert.
All right, lay it on me.
This one involves a classic truck collision.
Ooh, that sounds interesting.
But the circumstances aren't straightforward.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
So Bobby Gonzalez is suing his neighbors, John and Heather Gilbert,
Okay.
for damages to his classic truck,
All right.
which was hit while it was parked.
Oh, no.
Yeah, and John Gilbert, he admits to hitting the truck,
Okay.
but he says it was partly Gonzalez's fault.
Oh, so he's trying to shift some of the blame.
Exactly.
So he's trying to shift some of the blame. But can you really blame someone for hitting your car if it's illegally parked or covered?
That's a good question, and that's what Judge Judy had to sort out.
Yeah, what are the details of this case?
Okay, so the incident happened around 5:30 a.m. on a rainy morning.
Okay.
John was on his way to pick up his son for school,
All right.
and it was still dark outside.
Yeah, so visibility was probably an issue.
Definitely, John claims that he saw a reflection,
Okay.
or what he thought were lights coming at him,
Oh.
and then caused him to swerve
Uh-huh.
and hit Gonzalez's parked truck.
So he's saying it was an accident.
Yeah, an unavoidable accident due to the bad visibility.
It does make you think about how important it is to be careful when you're driving in those conditions.
Yeah, you have to be extra cautious.
Especially when it's dark and rainy.
But here's the problem.
What is it?
The police report stated that John was actually at fault
Oh, really?
for failing to yield at a stop sign.
So he didn't stop completely?
Apparently not, and that kind of contradicts his whole unavoidable accident story.
Yeah, if he wasn't paying attention enough to yield at an op sign,
Yeah.
then maybe he wasn't driving as effortfully as he claimed.
Right, and his testimony about his speed and what he was doing before the stop sign was also pretty unclear.
Oh, how so?
He kept changing his story.
Really?
Initially, he said he was approaching the stop sign, but then he later tried to say that he was slowing down.
Oh, that's a big difference.
It is. And Judge Judy, she picked up on that inconsistency right away.
Of course she did. She's like a human lie detector.
She really is. And she asked Whitney to replay John's initial statement, and it confirmed that he never actually mentioned slowing down.
Wow, so he was caught in a lie.
Yeah, and then his wife, Heather, tried to jump in and offer her own testimony.
What?
Even though she wasn't even in the car at the time.
Not a good idea.
Not a good look. And Judge Judy shut that down immediately.
She doesn't tolerate any nonsense?
Yup. She dismissed both John and Heather's counterclaims.
For what?
For damages and harassment.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and then it gets even more complicated with this truck.
Yeah.
It was a classic.
Oh, really?
A 1952 Chevy pickup.
Wow.
I know. So figuring out its value and the repair costs was pretty tricky.
Yeah, classic cars are a whole different ballgame.
They are. It's not like you can just check the Kelley Blue Book.
Exactly. You have to consider the rarity and the condition.
And all the restoration costs.
Right. It could be way more expensive to fix.
Exactly. And Gonzalez, he didn't have a detailed invoice.
Oh.
Or an estimate for the repairs.
So how could he prove how much you needed?
He couldn't really. He was basically asking Judge Judy to just guess a figure.
And I bet she wasn't happy about that.
Not at all. She refused to do it.
She always says you have to come prepared with evidence.
She does. And she was super frustrated with John's lack of accountability.
Yeah.
And his attempts to shift the blame.
So what happened?
Well, in the end, she awarded Gonzalez $2,000.
Okay.
But she told him he could take the case back to small claims court.
Oh, really?
Yeah, if he thought he could get more money there.
Interesting. So she gave him some options.
She did. This case was a wild ride.
It sounds like it.
So many legal lessons packed into one.
And what about Judge Judy's commentary?
Oh, she had plenty to say.
What was her take on all this?
Well, she basically said that people need to start taking responsibility for their actions.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to things like driving safely.
That's a message we hear a lot from her.
We do. She's always calling out that tendency to avoid blame.
It's a common theme in her courtroom.
It is. Okay, ready for another case?
Sure, let's hear it.
This one takes us back to California.
Okay.
For Garcia versus Turin.
All right.
It's a motorcycle lane splitting accident.
Lane splitting. I'm curious to hear how that plays out in court.
Yeah, so Omari Garcia is suing April Turin for damages after their vehicles collided.
Okay, so what happened?
Garcia was lane splitting on her motorcycle.
Uh-huh.
And Turin made a left turn.
Oh, no.
and hit her.
So they both could potentially share some of the blame?
Right. Garcia was lane splitting, which, have them inherent risks.
Definitely.
And Taryn might not have seen her before turning.
It sounds like a tricky situation.
It is. And it's important to note that lane splitting is actually legal in California.
Oh, it is?
Yeah, but that doesn't automatically mean that Garcia is free from responsibility.
Right. Just because something's legal doesn't mean it's always safe.
Exactly. And to make things even more complicated, Taryn was driving without insurance.
Oh, no. That's not good.
Not good at all. Plus, she was cited for failing to yield when making the left turn.
So she was definitely in the wrong on that one.
Yeah, and Garcia, she claims that it was right behind a stopped car.
Okay.
And she moved to the side to avoid rear-ending it.
I see.
Which is how she ended up in the path of Taryn's car.
So she was trying to avoid an accident.
Right, and she insists that she wasn't in the bike lane.
Okay, so she's saying she was trying to be safe.
Yeah, but Judge Judy was skeptical.
Oh, really? What did she say?
She said, quote, you wanted to go. There was no reason why you couldn't. That's why you drive a motorcycle, because you can get into tight places. But you look like an intelligent young woman. Don't take chances.
So Judge Judy thinks she took an unnecessary risk.
Yeah, even though it was legal to lane split.
She's all about being safe.
And to make things even worse, Taryn's son's girlfriend,
Yeah?
who was a passenger in the car, was injured in the accident.
Oh, no. So now there are injuries involved.
There are.
That definitely makes things more serious.
So what was the outcome?
Yeah, what did Judge Judy decide?
She ended up awarding Garcia the value of her motorcycle.
Okay.
Which was $647.
All right.
But she didn't award any punitive damages.
To either side?
To either side. She said they both made mistakes.
So even though Taryn was driving without insurance,
yeah,
the judge didn't really penalize her?
No, she just focused on compensating Garcia for her losses.
I see. It's a reminder that even in cases where there are clear violations, the outcome might not always be what you expect.
Right. This case really makes you think about motorcycle safety and the risks that come with lane splitting.
Even if it's legal.
Exactly. It's important for all drivers to be alert and aware.
For sure. You never know what other drivers are going to do.
You really don't. Okay, on to our next case.
Hit me.
This one highlights the importance of being careful about lending money.
Okay.
Even to family.
Oh boy, family and finances.
I know, never a good mix.
What's the story here?
So it's Spencer versus Jennings.
All right.
Tracy Spencer is suing her cousin, Chris Jennings,
for
a loan that she gave him to cover his mother's funeral expenses.
Oh, that's a tough situation.
It is.
So he's trying to shift some of the blame?
Right. John claimed Gonzalez's truck was illegally parked and covered up, which made it harder to see, and he actually suggested the cover contributed to the accident.
Interesting. So he's saying it was partially Gonzalez's fault for how he parked?
Exactly.
But can you really blame someone for hitting your car just because it's illegally parked or covered? I mean, shouldn't you be paying attention regardless?
Right. It's a tough one.
Yeah. What did Judge Judy think?
Well, she definitely had some thoughts. So the accident happened in around 5:30 in the morning. On a rainy day.
All right.
John was on his way to get his son for school. And it was still dark out.
Yeah, so visibility was probably pretty bad.
Oh, yeah. John said he saw like a reflection.
Oh.
Or what he thought were lights coming towards him.
Okay.
And that made him swerve and hit Gonzalez's truck.
So he's arguing it was an honest mistake because he couldn't see clearly.
Right, but the police report actually stated that John was at fault for failing to yield at a stop sign.
Ah, so he didn't stop completely.
Apparently not. And that really weakens his whole argument about it being an unavoidable accident.
Yeah, if he wasn't paying enough attention to stop at a stop sign, then maybe he just wasn't driving carefully enough in general.
That's what Judge Judy seemed to think.
And what about his testimony? Did he explain himself?
He tried, but his story was all over the place.
Really? How so?
First, he said he was approaching the stop sign.
Okay.
But then later, he tried to say he was slowing down.
Those are two very different things.
Right, and Judge Judy, she caught that inconsistency immediately.
I am not
She had Whitney replay John's first statement.
And
it proved he never said anything about slowing down.
Busted.
Yeah, and then to make things even worse, John's wife, Heather, tried to jump in and give her own testimony.
Oh, no, she wasn't in there, though, right?
Nope, not at all. Judge Judy quickly shut that down.
Of course she did.
And dismissed all their counterclaims for damages and harassment.
Wow, that's a lot of claims.
So then to add another layer to all of this, Gonzalez's truck was actually a classic.
Oh, really?
Yeah, a 1952 Chevy pickup.
Wow, so figuring out the value and the repair costs must have been difficult.
Extremely difficult.
Yeah, classic cars are a whole other ballgame.
They are. It's not like you can just look it up online.
Exactly. You have to consider the rarity, the condition, the cost of restoration.
Yeah, it's complicated. And Gonzalez, he didn't have a detailed invoice or an estimate for the repairs.
Uh-oh, so he couldn't really prove how much he was owed?
Exactly. He basically asked Judge Judy to just guess a number.
And I bet she wasn't having it.
Nope, she refused.
She always says you have to come prepared with evidence.
She does, and she was not happy about John's lack of accountability.
Yeah, and all his attempts to shift the blame.
She actually compared this case to the famous legal case, Palsgraf versus Long Island Railroad.
Interesting. What's that about?
It deals with the concept of proximate cause and foreseeability.
So basically, was John's negligence the direct cause of the damage?
Exactly. That's what Judge Judy was getting at.
And what was the final ruling?
So she ended up awarding Gonzalez $2,000.
Okay.
But she also told him he could take it back to small claims court if he wanted.
Oh, really?
Yeah, in case he thought he could get more money there.
Interesting. So she gave him some options.
She did.
Wow, this case was packed with legal lessons.
It really was.
From driving safely to proximate cause to making sure you have all the right evidence.
Yeah, and let's not forget Judge Judy's commentary on personal responsibility.
Oh, right. She's always emphasizing that.
Always.
Well, I think we've learned a lot today.
We definitely we covered everything from contract disputes to family feuds to those dueling drunks.
Yeah, and it's amazing how these everyday situations can teach us so much about the law.
It really is. It shows you how important it is to understand your rights.
And responsibilities.
Exactly. And, sometimes even when things seem straightforward, they can get really messy.
Absolutely. That's why it's so important to be prepared.
Couldn't agree more. So thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Judge Judy's courtroom.
It's been a pleasure.
We'll see you next time for more legal adventures.